Okay, hello everyone, and good afternoon to you all. My name's Andrew Whitehouse, if I haven't met you, and I'm very lucky enough to be the Chief Research Officer of the Autism CRC, and welcome to today's webinar. So we're holding 4 webinars across the Autism Month to improve our understanding about autism and to share some of the Autism CRC's latest research and outcomes across the 3 programs. We had our first webinar the other day, which was great fun. On Monday, we have a session to hear the perspectives of autistic adults about what being autistic means to them and what others would like to know about autism. So today's webinar, what we're talking about today is adulthood. But before we get started, I'd like to let you know about your opportunity that you have to actually submit questions, and that's in that chat box that is hopefully up on your screen. If you type questions in there, I will get them, I'll write them down, and then if we're lucky at the end, we'll have a bit of time to answer those questions. Yes, so please do that at any time throughout the webinar. Okay, so on to today's topic. So in program 3 of the Autism CRC, we are focused on the transition from school to further education, employment and adult life, with the ultimate goal of assisting autistic people to find a valued place in society. Today we brought together leading specialists to present Autism CRC's latest research informing the development of practical support for adults on the autism spectrum as they prepare for their working life. So our experts today, who you'll see on their screen, on your screen, will also outline 2 longitudinal studies currently being undertaken by the Autism CRC, which are very important and really interesting to know a bit more about. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker today, and that's Marina Ciccarelli. She's the Autism CRC project leader and also an associate professor at Curtin University. Today, Marina will be speaking about helping autistic adults to plan and prepare for their working life. So you can get me off the screen now, and finally we'll be able to hear from Marina Ciccarelli. So, and then Marina will talk for about 15 minutes, and then we'll introduce our next speaker. Over to you, Marina.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the transition to employment from school, and it's one of the topics of conversation that when we've spoken to parents all around the country, this has been one of the hardest conversations to have with young adults and teenagers entering into adulthood. So I'm going to share a little bit of our learnings with you and some of our tips around how to perhaps approach this particular topic. So we talk to a lot of young people all the way around Australia, and we have got together their stories, and we've created almost a persona of the young autistic adult in Australia. This is Ted. Ted's on the autism spectrum. He is 17 and he's in his last year of school. And Ted hasn't really started thinking about what he wants to do when he finishes school. He's really smart. He's brilliant on the computer. He has got some a brilliant array of Jackie Chan movie quotes that people don't seem to appreciate. And Ted really doesn't know what's going to happen after Year 12 finishes. His parents have tried to speak to him. It's not a conversation he's wanted to have. He doesn't use public transportation independently. His mum takes him around everywhere. And when school finishes, he finds that the few friends he did have at school, he no longer sees now. He can't move around his beyond his neighbourhood because he doesn't drive or use public transportation. And he doesn't really have a purpose every day. He spends a lot of time in his bedroom playing computer games, and he's becoming more and more socially isolated. And a year on, Ted's in his bedroom, continues to be socially isolated, no job prospects, and he's starting to get quite depressed. When we told this story around the country, people nodded in agreement and said, that's us, that's our child, that's the young person that I'm working with. So it's a difficult conversation to have. Young people on the spectrum are less likely to be able to get employment than their typically developing peers, neurotypical peers, and also other young people with a disability. And this results in a risk of labour force and social exclusion, like Ted was experiencing, and also poorer mental health outcomes for these young people. When we look at some of the principles for assisting these young people, we've got 5 basic principles for successful transition. We developed the Boost Day, or the Better Outcomes and Successful Transitions for Autism, as part of several years of research, and we talked to young people all around the country, and we developed a transition planning tool to assist them to plan and prepare for that move into adulthood and into employment. We've had over 100 young people trial the Boost Day, and we've had overwhelming feedback that it's a feasible tool to use, which means that it's simple to use, it's available freely for them, and what we found is that young people who use the Boost Day were able to improve their self-determination, or their feeling that they were able to take control and charge of planning for their future. There's 5 principles. The first one is to focus on the big picture. And this is really, really important. Focusing on the big picture is difficult for young people on the autism spectrum, because they haven't really experienced things into the future. And so it's hard for them to imagine what that's going to look like. So it's about having a discussion, talking about what work brings beyond just a paycheck, but being able to meet new people and socialise, an opportunity to become financially independent, as well as being the opportunity to develop skills and have a sense of value or a purpose in life. The only way to try and assist young people on the spectrum to understand what work is going to be like is to immerse them in it. And there are some opportunities for them to do that, even while they're at school. And so some of those real world opportunities might be around planning and trialing a work experience. It might also be encouraging them to take up a hobby, look at doing some volunteering, really opportunities where they're focused on completing a task and where they have to interact with others as part of those activities. The second principle is encourage the young person to dream big. Research shows that young people are more likely to succeed when they're surrounded by others who believe that they're going to do well, and encourage them to aim high. And even if the young person doesn't reach their absolute exact target or goal, they're still going to end up further ahead. One of the things that we can do is to help them break down big goals into small manageable steps to get some of those quick successes, because nothing fosters success like success. And if you're finding that you're not getting any wins on the board and there's just not any of those successes, then rethink what the goals are. Are you looking at trying to achieve a goal at the right time and provide the just right challenge? Sometimes if the goal is too big, too hard, it might not, you're not going to get those successes, and it can become a little demoralizing. Principle number 3 is keep the young person at the centre of transition planning. And this is really, really important, because they need to be included in all planning and decision making for their life after school, because it helps them to develop those self-advocacy skills for once they do leave school and want to transition into work, and help them to keep focusing on the positives. And getting involved can be difficult. So if they're going to a transition planning meeting, some of the things that they can do is to perhaps, you can look at keeping those meetings short and kind of work to an action-oriented agenda, so that it's really clear what's going to be achieved in this particular transition planning meeting. The young person might be able to attend the meetings either in person, or they might be able to, just as I am today, come in virtually, and that way they can mute themselves or put their camera off as needed. They might not speak in the meetings, they might just do some instant messaging. They might have others speak on their behalf, and they might need to use some sensory tools, maybe a fidget spinner or something else, to help manage their anxiety during the meeting. Principle number 4 is to have a champion on the team, and this is really important, because every young person needs a champion to help them achieve their goals, and the champion might advocate for them, connect them with other people who can help them with planning and finding meaningful work, or just to be a mentor. Ideally, it would be wonderful to have a mentor who is an older person who's on the autism spectrum, who's got some of those lived experiences. A champion might be a health professional, it might be a teacher. Parents have often said they want to be champions for their parents, but sometimes they feel like nobody's listening to them as parents, and they don't feel they have that agency. But regardless, whoever the champion is going to be, they need to encourage that young person to use a growth mindset and to play to their strengths. It's to look at what can you do well and to build on from there. And the last principle, but by no means in order of importance, is to start early. And the ideal time to start planning for transition for life after school is actually around year 9. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, we've missed that, don't worry. The next best time to start is right now, because the sooner we can engage the young people into thinking about what lies ahead for them and what this might look like, the more chance they're going to be successful. But as I said, starting the conversation can be hard. We've developed Boost Day, which is an online tool, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it quickly. There are 4 modules. The first one is about me, and it's about getting the young person to start to identify their interests, their strengths, their work preferences, and their life skills. Life skills might be things like catching public transportation or preparing a meal or able to get themselves dressed and out the door in the morning. There might be a whole lot of life skills that they need to develop in order to be able to be successful in a work experience or in the workplace. Module 2 is getting a team together, because it's really important that young person has got people to support them. The team at a minimum should be the young person and their champion, a parent if that's appropriate, and sorry, I've forgotten these slides. It should be a parent and if appropriate, and the young person should be attending that meeting in whatever way that they can. The Boost Day sends out a summary of the goals and then the new meeting goals for the next week and the next time for the next meeting. Section 3 is the My Goals section, and the Boost Day recommends some job ideas and some goals. And the most important goals relate to life skills, so looking at social groups, social skills groups, transportation training or money management. Some of those real life experiences we talked about, volunteering, work experience and mentoring. And it's important that people are allocated to those tasks related to those goals. So it's all action oriented. Somebody knows that there's something they need to do before the next time the group gets together to discuss the young person's progress. And at that meeting, it's time to book the next meeting. Section 4 of the Boost Day is My Progress. And young people on the autism spectrum can benefit from seeing their tangible progress. And there are visuals which are provided in the Boost Day program, but you can do this in any way that you want to with them, whether it be some kind of a progress chart or some other kinds of badges or rewards, whatever it is that they can see that they're moving forward. It's very important to frame any difficulties that they experience as part of the transition planning process, not as failures, but as experiences, because this promotes a growth mindset for them. So rather than thinking, I can't do this, this is something I will never be able to do, and it's because of who I am that I'll never achieve this, the growth mindset gives them the opportunity to think, well, I can learn to do anything if given the opportunity and the support to do it. Challenges will help me to grow, and my effort and my attitude determine my abilities. And any feedback that I get, if given properly, is constructive, and that's something that they can learn from. And it gives them that opportunity to start thinking about, I want to try new things, which can be difficult. So the Boost Day, as I said, it's an online tool. If you'd like to, afterwards, you can watch a short video about the Boost Day. If you've got your phone with you right now and you can set it to camera mode, you can take a shot of the QR code there, and that's going to take you to a YouTube video link. It's about a 5-minute video that'll give you some more information about the Boost Day. You'll hear a little bit about how useful it was from 3 young people on the autism spectrum who used the Boost Day, as well as their teachers and parents. Or you can copy the link that's down there into your computer's browser, and you can watch a little bit more about it. The Boost Day is going to be housed on a new platform called Way Employability, and Way Employability will be coming soon. There's going to be a nationwide launch of Way Employability. We're planning that for late 2019. It's going to be a mobile app that you can use on your phone or a tablet, and it's designed for young people on the spectrum, and it uses all of the research and all of the discussions we've had with these amazing young people and their families around the country have been part of the development of Way Employability. It'll include the career exploration and goal setting tool using the Boost Day. So all of the elements of the Boost Day will be there. It'll provide the young person and the people supporting them with information on things about how to choose career pathways to start exploring, to find out what's needed, what studies they might need to do, how to perhaps get to wherever they need to be going, whether it's TAFE or uni, as Rebecca said, or to a work experience. Catching public transportation can be really stressful, so there'll be some hints there around how to do that, including access to the Orient Trip app, which has been designed specifically for people on the autism spectrum, and also linking them to other mainstream services who can provide support around a number of different areas, whether it be around helping them to manage their mental health, or finding a driving school who might be able to assist them with getting a license, or with finding a work experience and support at the workplace. So have a look for Way Employability towards the end of the year. If you'd like to be on the mailing list for the launch, please do send me an email, and we can send you information on how it's going to be available to you. But we're very excited that the Boost Day is going to be available as part of a larger online service, and my details are there, which you can get later. But I'm going to hand over to our next speaker now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marina. That was soldiering on to the highest degree, so well done. Today, we're really lucky to have Dr. Rebecca Flower. So Rebecca is an Autism CRC researcher based at Trobe University. Rebecca has been quite involved with some of the longitudinal studies. Now, longitudinal studies just simply means studying individuals over time, so often across months, if not years, which is a really important thing, because of course we can only really understand so much about an individual if we see them once. It's really important that we see people multiple times. What these longitudinal studies allow us to do is to explore changes in a person's development and outcomes over an extended period of time. So Rebecca today will be giving a brief overview of this particular study and what we found about the experiences of young autistic adults as they transition from school to their adult lives. Over to you, Rebecca.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Okay, so thanks so much for having me today, guys. I really appreciate it. Like Andrew was saying, I'm Beck Flower. I work at the Olga Tennyson Autism Research Centre with Associate Professor Amanda Richdale, Alex Haschek, and Dr. Lauren Lawson, who I'm covering as the postdoc on this project while she's on maternity leave. So we'll be talking about young adults on the spectrum, so it aligns quite nicely with what Marina was saying. And let's see if I can go to my next slide. Oh, technology. There we go. Success. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today with regards to our study. So first I'll start off with the why. So I'll give you a quick overview of the knowledge regarding autistic transition age youth from what we knew prior to conducting the study, highlighting why the SASLA study was really needed. And then I'll go on to the how, so how we're conducting the study at the moment and who's participated and what we've found to date. So I'll start off with the why. So we know that transitioning out of high school and into employment or higher education can be really challenging for anyone, but it can be particularly challenging for autistic transition-aged youth, which aligns really nicely with what Marina was just saying with the case study she gave of that young individual. And I've met a number of young individuals just like that gent she was speaking about. So we know that those on the spectrum often experience social challenges and adverse events like bullying at school or in the workplace. We know that individuals on the spectrum often experience challenges beginning and maintaining higher education, which may have something to do with, I put there, a lack of structure. So there's a lot of structure and support in school, and that kind of drops away. There's a lot of questions about what the future looks like and what higher education actually looks like and what getting a job looks like. We know that people on the spectrum face a number of barriers to gaining and maintaining employment, and this is really my passion. I've worked in this area for a while, and I've met so many young adults who would just make bloody great employees, but really face a number of barriers to getting a job and maintaining employment. We know that young adults on the spectrum often experience mental health challenges, and we know that they often experience co-occurring conditions like, say, epilepsy or ADHD. However, we don't have a lot of data in the Australian population, so we would like to know what's happening for Aussies on the spectrum. Sample sizes are often small, meaning we don't really know sometimes if the sample size is small, if the challenges are just relating to that sample, or if we can generalise and say that it relates to everyone. And there often isn't a comparison sample of non-autistic individuals. So that means it might be a problem for everyone, not just those on the spectrum, but if we have a comparison sample, we can see if it's just a challenge for those on the spectrum or more of a challenge. Therefore, the Ciccarelli study is really useful. So we're having a large cohort of autistic and non-autistic individuals that we can compare on a whole range of different areas. Even better, as Andrew was saying, a longitudinal study means we can look at some things at one time point, but we can also look at things over a different times to see how they change. And that's why this study is really useful. So onto the how. So how we're conducting the study and who's participated so far. So it is an ongoing study. We finished recruitment, but as it's longitudinal, some of our participants are still completing the second and third time points. So the Ciccarelli study, sometimes I say SOLSA, the Ciccarelli study is an online survey-based project which follows young people aged 15 to 25 over a 2-year period. So they complete data collection at the first time online. It's all online, so you can do it in your own home. Baselines, just the first time you complete the study, again at 12 months and again at 24 months. So we have a few different samples. We have our autistic individuals. We have a group with and without a co-occurring intellectual disability. We tried to recruit a larger proportion of individuals with a co-occurring intellectual disability, so our sample was more representative of Australians on the autism spectrum, but we do have a smaller group. We found that group a little bit challenging to recruit for the research. We do have a group of non-autistic individuals without a co-occurring intellectual disability in the same age range, and we do also have a sample of parents and carers. So prior to conducting the study, the team engaged in community engagement. So they spoke to a number of autistic adults, organisations working with autistic individuals and family members, carers, partners, friends, to talk about what they thought were important for us to really look at in this study. We also consulted the research literature, which of course we do as researchers, to see what we knew, what the gaps were, what really needed to be investigated a bit further. And there was also an advisory group established throughout the study. And this is really important, as Sam and Julianne will speak to today. It's really important that we work alongside our autistic individuals in conducting research and interpreting and translating research. We are currently changing up our processes working with our advisory group and funding our group. And so we look forward to working alongside them more. So the study's really broad. We look at a whole bunch of different areas. So we start off with demographics like sex, age, living situation, relationship status. We look at education, employment, autism symptoms, mental and physical health, well-being, non-autism specific traits like emotion processing, and developmental and adaptive behaviour. In terms of who's participated, at baseline, we stopped recruiting for baseline July last year. we had 117 autistic adults and 221 non-autistic adults. So this is just the autistic individuals without a co-occurring intellectual disability. And that's pretty good. A lot of autism studies have quite small samples, so this is quite a large sample comparative to those studies. At the 12-month and 24-month time, you can see a lot of our autistic cohort have completed their data, and some of the non-autistic individuals have, but like I said, that's still ongoing. So we hope to see those numbers improve. People do tend to drop off participating in research over a long time, but we hope that our numbers will continue to increase, and we certainly have a long period of time until we expect that to stop. So I'm looking at my time, and I'm glad I've left a lot of time today to talk to you about what we have found so far. So I'll be speaking about the baseline data collection, because that's where we finished collecting data just for those autistic individuals without a co-occurring ID and the age-matched non-autistic individuals from the baseline time point. In terms of sex and age, we found that there were more females in the non-autistic group and more males in the autistic group. This aligns a little bit with what we know about the sex distribution among individuals on the spectrum, but this is changing. Nonetheless, there is a sex difference there. There's not much of an age difference though, which is great. So both groups were 15 to 24 or 25, and the average age for both groups was 19 with a standard deviation of 3, meaning the distribution is nice and similar between the two groups, which is really good for comparative purposes. In terms of age of diagnosis, it was 9.6 years was the average age of diagnosis, which is quite high and not ideal. As we know, the younger an individual is diagnosed, the better we can understand what their support needs are, and those needs can be met. And only 15% of our cohort were diagnosed at 3 or under. So this is just the autistic individuals without a co-occurring ID. The standard deviation was also about 5.5, so which just means that there's quite a large variation in the group on where they were diagnosed. So it'll be interesting to delve into that a little bit further as we conduct data analysis. So school experiences was one of the areas where I wanted to highlight today to give you a little bit of an overview of what we found. With regard to adverse outcomes, so for example, those who were suspended from school, we found no difference between the two groups. We found that both groups reported finding school a challenge, but both groups also reported finding school enjoyable to the same level. There were differences between the autistic and non-autistic groups with regard to liking classmates, with the non-autistic individuals reporting liking their classmates more. And with regard to the experience of bullying, with the autistic individuals being bullied more often. So it was quite high among both groups, but it was significantly higher among the autistic group. When we broke it down to different types of specific bullying, like teasing or physical attacks or aggression, there was no difference between groups. So this is alarming, but it would be interesting to break this down and see what's happening for our autistic cohort. I thought it would be useful to include some quotes from the autistic respondents about what transition support they found quite useful. As Marina was saying, this is a really challenging time for kids on the spectrum. And I thought that these really came down to insight and clarity and like transparency about the future and having someone to ask questions to. So for example, information on how to apply to university. As a first in family university student myself, I found uni can be really hard to understand how to do everything. And it seems like this is perhaps more of a challenge for those on the spectrum. I also thought it would be useful to include some desired transition support quotes. And again, I thought this came down to transparency about the future, having some information presented in a clear manner, having someone to ask questions to about these processes to give some insight. And then some people have also spoken about how it would be useful to have a better understanding of themselves and their needs. If you didn't get all of these now, this will be recorded so you can access them later. Post-school education was an area I wanted to touch on as well. So we found that more autistic individuals reported attending TAFE and more non-autistic individuals reported attending university. I thought that's really interesting, and it'll be really interesting to investigate this group. I'm not aware of this, having seen a stat like this before. Interestingly, a few were engaged in online learning, although note that in the face-to-face courses, there's often an online learning component anyway. And I included a quote here that aligns really with what I was saying, and what seems to be my feel from the data so far is that someone said they would have liked support in the form of what to expect. So the differences between university and TAFE and high school would really help prepare that transition. So about, again, transparency and clarity. In terms of employment, so just looking at those who had left school, same as the past slide, autistic individuals were much less likely to be employed than non-autistic individuals. These rates were close to what the best estimates we've got at the moment, which are from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and they suggest approximately 41% of autistic adults are employed. Our data was less. It was a bit lower for both groups. We did find that it may have something to do with the age, so it may be harder for young adults straight out of school to get a job. It'll be really interesting to look into this data and see what's going on. But looking at some of our qualitative responses, some people have said things like this quote here, that they thought it was because of their anxiety and Asperger's syndrome and a lack of awareness and understanding among employers. And having experience, I used to work for a not-profit, helping people, employers understand autism and hire autistic adults. This really aligns closely with what I've seen out there, is that there's a long way to go in terms of employers having a good understanding of autism in adulthood and employing autistic adults. So we hope to see this change over time, and hopefully this study can inform where and what needs to be changed. In terms of mental health, both groups reported mental health challenges, which is common among individuals with and without autism. We found that autistic individuals, however, were more likely to report current anxiety and depression, which does align with what we know among adults on the spectrum, that these are challenges faced quite frequently by autistic individuals. We did find in our sample that autistic individuals were more likely to be taking medication for mental health challenges, so this does indicate at least that support is being sought, which is great. In terms of physical health, sleep difficulties were reported by over 50% of both groups, so both were experiencing quite a high level of sleep challenges. There was no significant difference between the two groups though. We did find that autistic individuals were more likely to have visited a dentist, doctor, general practitioner, or had other health checks in the previous 12 months. So at least our autistic cohort did seem to be getting support and seeing practitioners, which is a good thing. And here I included a quote from one of our participants who said they would have liked training in life skills. So cooking, cleaning, time management, finances, how to make friends, maintain friendships and relationships, and preparing living away from home. Again, it's about what is happening in that future, and I guess, like Marina was saying, what is the big picture, because often that's just not clear, and particularly not clear for those on the spectrum. I really look forward to her talk. If you'd like to keep up to date with SASLA, we love to keep you up to date, so we send out quarterly newsletters. We include what we're up to, where we've been, any studies we're recruiting for. We've recently created a snapshot of the SASLA baseline profile. And we include links to papers we publish, so we really try to keep you in the loop. So please email at sasla@latrobe.edu.au. If you've got questions, I'd love to hear them. Please do email me anytime at r.flower@latrobe.edu.au. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was fabulous. Really enjoyed that. Look, without further ado, we're running about 3 minutes behind schedule, but what we're going to do is I'm going to throw now to our next presentation, which will be co-delivered by Dr. Sam Arnold and Julianne Higgins. Now, Sam's an Autism CRC researcher and who works closely, based at the University of New South Wales, so UNSW, as a postdoctoral research fellow in the School of Psychiatry. Julianne's an autistic advisor and peer researcher who works closely with Sam on the longitudinal study of Australian adults on the spectrum So we'll be talking about another longitudinal study here of adults who are a little bit older than school leavers. So Sam and Julianne will be outlining some of the inclusive research practices used in this study and how the study itself has evolved over time because of input from autistic advisors. Over to you, Sam and Julianne.
Great. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in or downloaded the webinar. My name is Sam, and I hope that technology is working for us, and hopefully you can see our slides. I work on the ALSA study, and I'm going to be co-presenting with Julianne, who's a peer researcher and autistic adult who's had longer involvement in the ALSA and be highlighting its history and the inclusive research and co-production approaches. I'm going to start with a brief introduction to the ALSA. So the ALSA is the sister study to the SASLA that Beck told you about. It's a longitudinal study with a 2-year follow-up. This means that every 2 years, we ask our participants to complete a new questionnaire. We have both online and hard copy versions of the survey, though most people complete it online. We only include people aged 25 plus years old in this study, as our focus is on adulthood and not so much the transition to adulthood, which is the focus of the SASLA. There is no upper age limit on our study, unlike much autism research. Our oldest self-reporting participant is 80 years old, and one of our carer respondents provides care to a 96-year-old autistic adult. The ALSA gathers data from autistic and non-autistic adults, as well as family members or carers. We also have an informant report version of the survey. If an autistic person is unable or does not want to complete the survey themselves, a close relative, for example, a partner or parent, can complete the survey about them on their behalf. And last on this slide, it's not too late to join in the ALSA. We are doing what is called rolling recruitment, so that people can join in at any stage, and I really hope that more people, both autistic and non-autistic, who tune into this webinar might consider signing up at this URL. These two graphs give an insight into the autistic adults in our time on sample. Of the 295 autistic adults, we only had 16 above 65 years old, and would really encourage older autistic adults to participate. There is little research looking at old age in autism, but we need more people participating to do this research well. The second graph shows the gender spread of ALSA autistic participants. Although our understanding of autism is changing, and the previous assumptions about a 1-to-4 male to female autism ratio are incorrect, we do have a large amount of autistic females in the ALSA, although this is not that unusual. We know that in general, females complete online survey research more than men, and we have seen this gender skew in other online autism research. It does give us an opportunity to explore the characteristics of autistic females, which is another area that is under-researched. And there's also a significant proportion of non-binary and gender-diverse autistic participants. This slide is to give you an overview of the many areas that ALSA covers, and then some of the examples of the measures that we include in that domain. Now, apologies for the small font, and I'm not going to read the entire list, and we haven't even included all the measures we would use, otherwise it'd be just too much to fit on one slide. The full list of measures should be published soon, but hopefully from this slide you can see that the ALSA covers many different areas, from health, emotional health, to relationships and participation, and importantly, service usage. Lastly, we use a few measures specific to carers of autistic adults. Hopefully from that brief introduction you have a bit of an idea as to what the Autism CRC ALSA study is. For the rest of the presentation, we're going to touch on the history of the ALSA and the importance we place in using inclusive research methodologies, and bring this home by giving an example of a loneliness study we have completed that dramatically changed its direction based on the input of our autistic advisors. In regards to inclusive research, the ALSA primarily uses a consultative approach, drawing on a group currently composed of 8 autistic adults and 1 carer of an autistic adult. Our advisors critique our interpretations of the study findings. They advise on future topic areas and survey design. We're moving towards greater involvement of our advisors from earlier in the output design and doing peer research projects in addition to consultative projects. Working with the ALSAs, we co-developed an inclusive research protocol that outlines how we aim for collaboration between the researchers and advisors. Unfortunately, given time constraints, I won't go through this protocol in detail today, though we hope to have it published in full and publicly available soon. A few brief comments on this. I think overall it's very important to be as considerate and autism friendly as possible, being very clear about expectations and open to the heterogeneity of autistic people and their differing preferences, particularly in terms of communication styles. It's important also that feedback is provided to autistic advisors as to what aspects of their advice influenced the research or reasons it didn't, and an acknowledgement of the autistic advisors in any output that they have contributed to. This protocol has evolved from working with our autistic advisors and helps both the researchers and advisors to understand their working relationship, though we are further evolving towards even more inclusive and peer research approaches. And so I think at this point it's good to pass to Julianne to share some of her history and the history of the ALSA and this ongoing evolution of inclusive approaches. Julianne, can you tell us about your history with the Autism CRC and the ALSA?
Julianne, I think you might still be muted.
Sorry, Julianne. Need to. Still can't hear you, Julianne. Can you try? Is there a little microphone you can turn us on?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Julianne.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Technology is an anathema to me. I was diagnosed 10 years ago, and in 2014, I contacted Professor Sylvia Roger at Autism CRC, asking for guidance to locating research into the neurology of autism. What I had read mentioned the lack of neural connections as deficits, yet didn't give an interpretation of greater connections in other areas of the brain. I wondered what these actually signified in autistic people. I was on a quest to understand. Sylvia and Dr. Kate Van Doren asked me to work on a charter, which became instead an advisory piece on attitudinal and practical concerns for providing autistics with safe and quality healthcare. I'd contributed to writing volumes 1 and 2 of the Inclusive Research Practice Guides and Checklists for Autism Research, and was invited by Sylvia to be the lay autistic advisor for setting up the first Research Academy workshop in 2015. At the same time, I was working with Kitty Rose Foley at University of New South Wales on the ALSA, on Kate Van Doren's recommendation. I, with other autistic advisors, were asked to give feedback on a comprehensive range of standardized measures and topic areas. These tools would have been devised and designed by non-autistic academics with a non-autistic population in mind. As you may appreciate, this brings into question the suitability of applying such tools to an autistic, neurologically different population. I gave feedback as to the suitability of layout, content, font, language, and relevance of these measures. The contributions of autistic advisors were acknowledged in publications and related presentations. When Dr. Kitty Rose gained a lectureship, she recommended my services to Dr. Samuel Arnold, who took over implementing ALSA from 2017 until the present day. Over the past 2 years, we have seen greater autistic input as peer research has evolved along with ALSA's inclusive research protocol. The organic development of inclusive peer research and collaboration was seen in designing questions and giving advice on outputs of Wave 2 projects on loneliness, employment, and medication, and hopefully will progress further into Wave 3. Why study autism in adults? This is a huge topic that needs addressing in greater detail, but here for brevity I must confine myself to areas related to the ALSA. Not only do we know very little about autistic adults, with most research focused on children, that autistic adults can relate their perspectives in ways that autistic children cannot, and thus provide researchers with individual insights into the contexts in which they experience invisible and vacillating difficulties in everyday life. There is concern if non-autistic researchers impute their neurotypical interpretations of behaviours, intentions, psychological and emotional states onto autistic individuals and design interventions based upon these same questionable interpretations. attitudinal shifts towards desire to learn from autistics, to understand our needs, strengths and quality of experiences in dealing with the invisible barriers negatively affecting daily life, may also benefit the broader population. Let me give you an example focused upon environmental suitability to highlight the value of studying autism in adulthood. Take autistic sensory sensitivity to sound and the increase in noise-induced hearing loss in the general population from mid-teens onward. Couple this with decreased concentration span found in working in open-planned workspaces due to distractions, interruptions, noise level, etc. Include classrooms. For autistics, there is also difficulty of being subjected to multiple sensory assaults from odours, bright lights, intrusions, noise, etc. Is it possible to address these issues as part of a general health and productivity plan? Hearing loss is not reversible. Can we broaden the understanding of the potential of Homo sapiens by becoming familiar with and learning from experience of those who differ from the dominant population?
Thanks, Julianne. Let's move on now to a concrete example of our recent loneliness study that leveraged the expertise of autistic advisors. And for context and background, this great figure from our student Dawn depicts the mainstream conceptualization of loneliness. The concept is that loneliness is both a negative feeling of a lack of intimacy combined with the judgment that the feeling is because you have less quality or quantity of relationships than you would like. Loneliness is associated with a lot of negative impacts such as depression, anxiety, and even cardiovascular risk. It is likely that the core characteristics of autism, such as differences in social interaction, could impact on loneliness. There are a few studies on loneliness in autism, and particularly in adulthood, and our work was the first study to use validated measures in a comparison group. Our initial questionnaire quantitative analysis confirmed the higher rates of loneliness for autistic adults in the ALSA sample. Of interest, quantitatively, we found largely similar associations with loneliness for autistic and non-autistic adults, such as social skills and dissatisfaction with social support, both being associated with loneliness across samples. Based upon these quantitative findings, we made our initial interpretations that what drives loneliness in autistic adults is similar to non-autistic adults, and autistic adults are lonelier as they are more affected by differences in social skills and social support. Therefore, we should aim to improve social skills for autistic adults and facilitate more social support as methods to reduce loneliness. And we sent a lay summary of these initial findings and interpretations to our advisory group for their review. And so now I'm going to pass to Julianne again. Julianne, can you tell us some of the things that you sent back to us once you reviewed our initial findings?
Yes, for autistics, friendships, companions, aloneness, and loneliness are not necessarily the same as seen through typical eyes. As an autistic, I do not require continual contact throughout weeks, months, etc., whereas non-autistics seem to need continual contact, and a lapse in the rhythm of frequency seems to be seen as being rude or a lack of commitment to the relationship. I cannot sustain and maintain regular and frequent contact. I become physically and mentally exhausted. Small talk, chit-chat, and gossip are difficult to impossible for most of us autistics and is very energy sapping. I propose that that autistics and typical people would agree that the greatest intimacy is to be understood.
And the feedback from our advisors had a major impact on our direction in this study. We realized that by just focusing on the quantitative data, we would be overlooking important understandings of loneliness in autism. And by not analyzing the qualitative data, we were in essence ignoring the voice of autistic people on this subject. The advisors' input overall made us change the methodology we were using, moving from a purely quantitative study to a mixed methods approach. They highlighted the importance of neurodiversity in understanding social skills differences, and that finding places where the person is accepted and where they are interested in being, such as common interest groups, was a key consideration for many autistic adults. Importantly, the advisors highlighted the difference between loneliness and a desire to spend time alone. Once we incorporated the qualitative data, we ended up with very different understandings that has set a path for a future program of research in this area. We found many autism-specific barriers to socialization that, unfortunately, past negative experiences has led some adults to no longer have the desire to socialize. Autistic adults highlighted that social interaction can be exhausting. The qualitative data confirmed the advisor's comments, highlighting that the brief ULS-8 loneliness measure that we had used may be problematic for autistic adults. In particular, the item, "I am unhappy being so withdrawn." Autistic adults might like being withdrawn at times, but otherwise are also lonely. Based on our advisor's feedback, we're now gathering data using the full ULS-20 loneliness scale, and we'll be doing further investigations of loneliness, including longitudinal analyses. Considering comments such as "we don't need fixing," overall, we changed our interpretations and conclusions towards an understanding of individual needs in informing supports provision, suggesting support personnel need to be sensitive to specific needs and respond accordingly. Also, that we hope the society can be more accepting of differences in social communication. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. Hopefully you can see the critical role that autistic adults have played in the development and outputs arising from the ALSA. Into the future, inspired by working closely with Julianne, the ALSA hopes to move beyond having autistic adults as advisors to more outputs where autistic adults are peer researchers, co-researching a topic and involved in all stages and early stages of research projects. One area where this is already happening is we are developing an impacted diagnosis scale and have had heavy involvement of autistic adults in each stage of its development. There are many topic areas we'll be pursuing into the future, given the wide scope of the ALSA, and just one of these, which is very important and deserves to be mentioned, is an exploration of the barriers to healthcare for autistic adults. Thank you for listening to us give an overview of the ALSA and its inclusive research approach. A final shameless plug here for recruitment: sign up to the ALSA now and complete your survey, and you'll have the chance to win a $200 gift card. We'll be giving away a gift card every 3 months. So not only will you be supporting work aiming to improve the lives of autistic adults, but you'll have a good chance to win a gift card. You only have to be Australian and over 25 years old in order to participate. Both autistic and non-autistic adults are needed. And at this point, Julianne, can I ask, do you have any final comments for us?
Yes, Sam. I'd encourage more of my peers to take advantage of being respected and heard, with the potential of being effective in impacting the understanding of autism. So jump on board, sign up to our project. Thank you.
Julianne. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Sam and Julianne. That was fabulous. Look, we're almost at very close to time. Just to say that all of these presentations have been recorded and they will be available on the CRC website. Just one very, very quick question, and I might direct it to Sam and Julianne. We've had a question from somebody who's said that they have an adolescent on the spectrum, and also believe that her husband might also be on the spectrum. Are there support services for partners of people on the spectrum that you might like to refer this lady to?
Julianne, do you have any specific suggestions on support services? I think there's lots of, I'll be doing a search online, and Beck might also have some ideas on this one.
Depending on which state they're in, but please do feel free to email me. I know a lot about South Australia, a little bit about Victoria, but I can certainly look into it and get back to you. So feel free to email me or any of us or Sam, and we'll look into it for you.
It's not an area that I've really gone into, as I'm the autistic one in my relationship, but my partner sort of doesn't really get involved with any discussion about autism or anything like that. So even if there was something, there'd be no need for it. Well, there might be need, but it wouldn't be taken up.
Okay. Yeah, please do contact any of our presenters with any further follow-ups to these questions. We are at time, and thank you for bearing with us through those slight technical hitches, which we managed to fix. And thank you to the presenters for their time, Marina, Rebecca, Sam, and Julianne. We really do thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. I hope you find the webinar informative and insightful. This year's webinar series has been extremely popular, and all of the sessions are actually fully booked, which is just fabulous. We'll be recording these, we have recorded these, and we'll be presenting them, or at least providing links on our YouTube channel, as well as on the website. So you will be able to access them there. All right. Look, there's not much else to say other than that if you would like to know more about the Autism CRC's work across the lifespan, please do visit our website, where you can also sign up for our e-news and participate in some of our studies. You can also follow us on social media if you are so inclined. Thank you again for taking part. Thank you to our presenters, and I really hope you have a lovely weekend. See ya.